Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you doing this morning?
Doing well,
Good.
doing well. I want to start off with a couple comments about the economy. And it's not doing as well as the government's claiming, or at least the administration part of the government.
They wouldn't lie,
You'll
would
find
they?
some Democrats that will complain, but that's all politics. But I did find a neat little summary of, I think, the disaster we're facing. It came on Hedge. Can't be too surprised that Hedge is reporting reasonable news. And this came out today, and Michael Snyder is listed as the author. And the title to this, Daniel, is This is the #1 challenge that Americans believe they are facing in 2025. And that caught my attention, so I wanted to see if I agreed with him, and I do. And it has to do with economic policies. And I can remember, I think it was back a few presidential campaigns, but I think it might have been back with the Goldwater campaign or something like that. There was an argument of whether you vote from your head or vote from your heart. And voting from your heart was supposed to be superior, and voting for your head was supposed to solve problems by some assessments. But I always argued they're both wrong. I said the real vote comes from their stomach. You know, if they think they're going to have an empty stomach or how things are going, and having a job. Now, the main thrust of this article today is talking about that a poll that was done, and the conclusion was the biggest point of the conclusion is that 67% of the workers work from paycheck to paycheck.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, that has to be a terrible feeling, you know.
Tell me about
it. Especially if they don't understand exactly why, and especially they had trusted the government. The trust is still there, super great, and they trust the government to manage the money. And there are many in this country, to the tune of millions, but not having much say in the government, that the real source of this problem is running up debt, and you have to pay for it, and this is the way the middle class pays for it. They just print up the money, and yet this is a huge number of people that in that type of situation. And this is what develops a lot of sense of insecurity and anger. There's going to be anger. Who did this? The government, the Democrats, the Republicans, and back and forth. And there's over about half of them are retiring, or they're delaying retirement because they don't have any money to retire on.
Yeah.
I mean, they might look at it and say, yeah, I'm going to have Social Security, but, it doesn't quite meet up to what they've had right now because some of the salaries are still bloated through the inflation. But anyway, it does create a lot of problems. And there's a couple of statistics he put in here I found interesting. One was the largest mall in San Francisco was 93% empty.
Oh, yeah, that's Union Square, I think.
Boy,
yeah.
I'll tell you. And
could be partly because of people defecating on the streets. Nobody wants to shop
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we could bring up, but it also fits into the whole climate of who's been running things. And you can't say, well, it was all Biden's fault.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy for people to say that. But to tell you what, he contributed. But I think Republicans have treated, when you took it, if you want to start with one big issue, not the whole thing, but the big issue of spending money. You know, do the deficits go down when we have Republicans in place? Has much happened in the last 6 months? Not a whole lot. And people have to realize, to understand this, that inflation is a tax. They run up too much debt. You have to pay for it. So they don't have any money in the bank. You can't make people work harder. You can't artificially push interest rates up higher. You can artificially do it for a short term for short term only. But this is hit up, and he makes the point: commercial properties are in deep trouble. So this whole idea, if you could turn in the evening news, especially if it's a Republican station, they have to. They are very careful, and we tend to have a little caution ourselves because Trump is a leader, and he does have a clout, but that doesn't mean that if we're seeking out the truth and have a few points to make, I think we're obligated to do that. And there was one statistic or thing that he mentioned in this article that's frightened me. He says not too far from Austin, Texas, 1 hour's drive in Killeen, Texas, there was a 40% decrease in condo prices and people moving out.
Wow!
Everybody said it knows Austin is the new big city and computers and all of that. So I think that the problem. I agree with his assessment that it's bad. He didn't get too much into how to deal with this, and most of the time they say, "Well, yeah, we agree with you. We should cut spending. Let's get Trump. Let's get Elon Musk. He'll take care of that." But they weren't much interested in that approach. So anyway, it's a disappointing story. It's discouraging. No hope in there, except I have to look for something. Maybe this will wake up some people. Why is this going on? And I especially maintain that we do understand that this is a predictable event. It's a prediction that you can't time, but you can predict what's going to happen, and the debt has to be liquidated. The malinvestment has to be liquidated, and that's what they're fighting over right now. They're fighting over the remnant of the boom time series, and that'll take some time, but we'll talk about some foreign policy and see if we have any breakthroughs there where we might be cutting back on our empire.
Sure, absolutely, Dr. Paul. So, on the sidelines of the General Assembly meeting at the UN this week, President Trump met with some Arab and Muslim leaders.
Right.
The meeting apparently went well, but put up that first clip now, and you'll see what supposedly, according to reports, he promised. Now, this is by way of Dave DeCamp at antiwar.com. Great write-up as usual. Report: Trump told Muslim leaders he would not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. President Trump met with a group of Arab and Muslim leaders on the sidelines of the UN, reportedly told them he wouldn't allow Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to annex the Israel-occupied West Bank. And Dave goes on to say the Muslim and Arab leaders have reasons to doubt pledges from Trump since he has recently significantly damaged U.S. diplomatic credibility by using negotiations for Iran as a cover to help Israel launch a war. The president also claimed he was unaware of Israel's plans to bomb Hamas leaders in Qatar, an attack that came while they were discussing a U.S. ceasefire proposal. But according to Israeli officials, he was informed beforehand and didn't oppose the attack. I think in this one instance, Dr. Paul, the Israelis were right, and Trump was fibbing, or Trump's people were fibbing, because there's no way anyone could attack that U.S. base in Qatar without the U.S. knowing beforehand and having the ability to take it down.
Let's see if we can figure out where the foreign policy is. Where was it, and where has been changes? Because if he doesn't want them to annex that, so does that mean that he might send American troops in there to stop it from happening?
Hopefully not.
I don't think so.
No.
But it's the morality of all this, the constitutionality, it's the practical fact that we don't have money to do this, and we don't have the authority to do this. And this has to, I don't know, I just can't explain it because when you mention it, but there's a lot of flip-flops on this. I mean, do we have a one state answer or two state answer for this? And I think technically we believe in two states there, one for each side, but in practicality that doesn't exist, and I'm sure the Israelis are going to fight to the last Ukrainian and last Arab, to protect that from some other nations who would like to communicate in there, but their meeting I didn't think accomplished very much with Trump.
Well, I think the solution is actually pretty easy, which is that really, and I would agree with the Israelis, it's not America's position to tell them what they can and can't do. But there's a caveat: no money, no weapons, no political and diplomatic backing in the world bodies. You're on your own, baby. Do whatever you want. That would be the day that I would like to see.
That's so easy. If the American people knew that, well, I'll tell you what, I think that attitude is growing. I think that was blasphemy,
for sure.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
But right now, and the only challenge we have is some people that we're in disagreement with almost everything else are taking this position for their own reasons. But that's the whole thing that we tried to do, was work with people and not decide what their whole philosophy was about. But if we think the American empire is spreading along, we should find people who will be, victims of what our policies are. But that is to me a very sad situation, and this negotiating and talking, and I guess Netanyahu, fourth visit to the White House this year. And
it's only September. He can squeeze in a couple more.
I think you may remember when they had these foreign dignitaries, including Netanyahu, come to the House floor. I felt like our house is being invaded.
Yeah, Zelensky did that too. Well, they say that every time Netanyahu comes, he brings a big bunch of his dirty laundry. So maybe he's using up some extra skivvies or something. But that is comes ahead of his fourth visit this year. I don't know if there's been a foreign leader that's visited the U.S. more frequently than that under any previous president. I can't imagine that. We'll go to that next one and go to one other. So this is the other thing too, though, by the way, Dr. Paul, that should be bring up, that apparently, so Trump promised the Arab and Muslim leaders no annexing the West Bank. But Huckabee, his own ambassador in Israel, previously suggested the U.S. wouldn't oppose Israel annexing the Palestinian territory, and expanding the illegal settlements there. So the two are at odds. They're not on the same page when it comes to that. Go to the next one. According to a report from Axios, Trump also presented the Arab and Muslim leaders with a plan to end Israel's genocidal war in Gaza. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff also attended the meeting and claimed a breakthrough on a Gaza ceasefire. We've heard that before. But a source told Haaretz that the Gaza truce deal was nowhere close to fruition, and there's no sign of Trump being willing to put pressure on Netanyahu to end the slaughter. So that's the thing. At one point, if that's going to happen, then Trump is going to have to finally say no to Netanyahu. And what did we learn yesterday from a very interesting and important appearance that Tucker Carlson made on Glenn Greenwald's show, which is that Netanyahu is boasting of the opposite. And I actually have that clip, and I'd like to listen to, I think, the first minute of that. I'm not sure exactly how long it is, but this is kind of a very shocking admission from Tucker Carlson.
Can't. I mean, Bibi's running around. This is a fact. I'm not guessing about this because I talked to people he said it to. Is running around the Middle East, his region, and his own country, and telling people point blank, just stating it, I control the United States. I control Donald Trump. He's saying that. And again, I'm not guessing at all. That's a fact. And I dare them to say that's not true because it is true and they know it's true. So I'm an American. How do you think it makes me feel? Even if I didn't vote for Trump, which I did vote, I campaigned for Trump. But even if it was Joe Biden, I'm an American. You can't it's too humiliating. I can't handle that. And I shouldn't have to put up with that. This is a country of 9 million people. I'm not even attacking the country. I'm attacking my leaders who are allowing my nation of 350 million people to be forced into doing things that are bad for me and my children because of some other country. Like, that is a violation of the most basic arrangement we have with our leaders, which is represent us, please, at least most of the time.
Cut that now. So that's interesting. If he's going around bragging how he controls Trump and controls America, that's not a good sign. So, I mean, I wonder with Trump's ego if that might finally spur him to say, back off, Bibi.
There's a rule that is unwritten, but it's realistic, and they're not paying any attention to it. But the rule is if you subsidize something, you get more of it. And I would say whether it's Zelensky or Netanyahu coming here and prodding the Congress and influencing our president, they do this because they get subsidized. It's so much can be done. The noise is made, and if you subsidize it, and we subsidize it, but we're running out of subsidies to pass out around the world, and the empire is going to shrink, and the monetary system will be reformed one way or the other. The only thing left, as for me personally, is to do my best to explain, to try to avoid the violence that generally follows this. This is very common, that when it breaks down, then there'll be a fight over whether it's a third world country or a huge country. They fight over that. Power and money is a big influencer. So this is and whoever has the influence right now, and Tucker's exactly right about this. I mean, he didn't make up that statement. He didn't have somebody write that statement. He felt that statement because he was so right on it. To put up with this stuff.
Yeah, it's beyond. I want to thank James Cabral for kicking in $40 today. He said, I missed you and Ron and Daniel in Burlington, Kentucky last night, I think he said. That's when Rand and Massey, Senator Paul and Representative Massey had a little town hall, and that was pretty neat. I saw James put up some pictures from that, so that was neat, James. Thank you for that. Let's move on to the next one. Now, this one kind of tickled you a little bit. You guys a giggle out of it. Wall Street Journal put that up. How Zelensky's charm offensive reversed Trump's skepticism on Ukraine. Dr. Paul, that's not something that you usually associate with Zelensky, but nevertheless.
Well, see, I'm not going to try to say there's some charm there. I'm back to my just original statement of saying, they're looking for subsidies, and sometimes we're stupid enough to pass out subsidies for who knows what reason, but somebody's going to make some profit out of it. That's a driving force. I think that's one of the biggest driving forces. Yes, the Middle East war is a big deal, but the big driving force is behind the scenes, the people who really control, the budget, and they know how to do it, and they get all the money that they need. And that, to me, is the big thing. And I think that Zelensky has not a whole lot of charm, but he must have a snake or something. And the charm works. And our people, like Tucker said, we just roll over.
Yeah.
And it's wrong, and it's something that's going to continue if we stop it, or the market will stop it, because we'll really have to announce the bankruptcy.
Well, this is kind of the Wall Street Journal, which, as you know, is really known as the War Street Journal. It loves war and it hates Russia. But the article, the crux of the short article was basically like, just a half a year ago when Zelensky was in the White House, President Trump and Vice President Vance drew him down. You don't have the cards, he said. And then how shocking it is now that he comes in. He's so welcome. He says, I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form, Trump said on Truth Social after meeting Zelensky. Why not? So a 180-degree turn. Now, for the newspapers, they can write all they want about, but if you put on that next clip, now this is from antiwar.com, this, I think, gives you a little bit more of an insight into President Trump's thinking, although I still believe, we can go forward one, I still do believe that this was kind of a trolling from Trump. But nevertheless, according to what Dave DeCamp is reporting here, that President Trump's positive statements about Ukraine taking back its territory were the result of yet another plan presented to Trump for a large counteroffensive on the part of Ukraine. We will remember that Ukraine has not taken back any territory in at least 2 years now, but apparently they have yet another plan. This is from the article. U.S. officials told the Journal that the president made the post after spending time with his special envoy to Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, and Mike Waltz, his former national security advisor. So he goes and hangs out with these two neocons, both of whom are authors of plans that have been disastrously failed in the past, and he comes out and changes his tune.
Yeah, it's bewildering, because why? Sometimes we think we get a hint, and then we postulate, well, it's due to this. But I can't interpret exactly what goes through their mind, but I think it's easy enough to interpret the outcome of what they're saying and doing leads to these problems. You know, if we wouldn't have to deal with the Middle East, Cuba, Iran, you know, Ukraine, or any of these things, if the principle of our foreign policy was clear cut and we believed in it and the people understanding that it's the morally correct principle as well as conforming to the Constitution. Now that seems like something that people would accept, and that's why right now it looks like the younger generation is up to looking at new things, and they certainly had paid attention to some of the things that Kirk was providing, and
Definitely.
I think that's good that happened. But I think people's attitudes have to change because it really isn't that complicated. But I think everybody gets a benefit on the short run from the counterfeiting.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks, well, I'll either beat it or they don't understand it. It's just smart economic people that, that can spend the money, and the Federal Reserve may be involved, but they don't realize how much involved because none of it would be possible. The wars wouldn't be possible and the welfare state wouldn't be possible if you didn't have the grandest of all counterfeiters printing out of the money, and then they have the stupidity of everybody in the world saying, yeah, that's as good as gold, until it isn't as good as gold anymore. Like what's going on right now.
Yeah. Well, for all of Trump seeing this great plan from Waltz and Kellogg, two great bright minds, we've been told, a splash of cold water on this comes from our good friend Colonel Doug McGregor, who put out a great piece. We republished it at the Ron Paul Institute. But this is a dose of reality to all of the stuff that Kellogg Cornflakes is putting up. Go to the next one. Now, this is the article. You can see it on our front page at ronpaulinstitute.org. War and Delusion, another great piece from the Colonel. But here are just a couple of points that he makes, Dr. Paul, to pour, again, cold water on the idea that Ukraine is going to take things back. His latest post to Truth Social, President Donald Trump claims with more dollars, euros, and missiles, Ukraine could still regain all its lost territory. President Trump's statement is a mixture of sentiment and self-delusion, not strategy. Few wars in modern times have been wrapped in so many illusions as this one. Now, a couple of points he makes to demonstrate that. The number of Ukrainian soldiers killed in action exceed 1.7 million. Go to the next one. The numbers of wounded in action are unknown, but anecdotal evidence suggests most of the wounded in action are seriously disabled. The ongoing mobilization of Ukrainian men in their late 50s and early 60s is not evidence for resilience, but of exhaustion. Without constant flows of dollars and euros, the Ukrainian state and society would collapse in a few days. And there's plenty more, and it's worth a good read. But that really is a dose of reality on all of this fantasy that they're about to take it back.
And that has to be delivered to the people in order for them to say enough is enough. Because, how many Americans, what percent of Americans would be presented these statistics to show how many people are dying? People that never did them harm, they never dropped a bomb on us, and on, and they're not a threat to us. And then for our people, what our people refuse to consider is their responsibility for this, because it's passive, because they're busy working and trying to take care of their family. They're not trying to work and to figure out exactly how this money transpires. But for that large list of people who were killed, you say, well, they were our enemy or something like that. But it was all done with our weapons, whether it was Vietnam or Korea or Middle East, Iran, and on and on. It's always with our money. So that is the great danger of us having tremendous wealth. We were born with it, and we had a reasonably decent system that encouraged wealth building. But there are some rules in morality and some rules in economics that limit this, and that people can talk about it. But I do think it's very important so people talk about it, because eventually, those ideas break out and people say, well, we did hear that this could have been prevented, and this is what we should do now.
Absolutely. Well, the last thing we want to touch on a bit before we take off is the separation of powers issue. And that's something we're both very, very interested in. And now Politico, which, as we know, is very critical of the administration. So you always have to sort of take that with a grain of salt. But nevertheless, it's an interesting article. If you put this next one up, the Trump administration is pushing courts to make more, quote, new law. And the crux of it is this sentence, Dr. Paul: since January, Trump's effort to concentrate unrivaled power in the executive branch has forced courts to wrestle, often in emergency timelines, with issues no court has ever addressed. But even that novel dynamic has been supercharged in recent days. So it looks like the courts are struggling to respond to this power grab on the part of the executive branch.
Yes, and who knows what's going to happen right now, because some of that stuff in the old days would never be brought up. Some of it's never been brought up before. But I think it's a result of the aggressiveness of the president. And he's unique. He's different. I think he probably has good instincts, and yet some of this stuff just bewilders me. What is he talking about? And some of it is just outlandish. And, it's uncertainty that I think is so bad. Sometimes if you have a bad guy, he said, this is what I'm going to do, blah, 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 and you understand it. That's one thing. You know what you're dealing with, but you don't know where he's coming from, and it can change. This is quickly. I mean, we don't even know what tomorrow will be or what the policy is going to be. And people are intimidated. His personality is powerful. He understands wealth and money, and he understands negotiations, and he understands, power. And people, they stop and listen. There was a time they could ignore somebody like this, but we had a chaotic situation with our previous president. But nobody thought he was going to do anything. But now, a lot of people are paying attention, and most people will say, "Well, yeah, you're right on this and that. Maybe technically this is wrong." But look at what he's done for ABC, and there have been some good things. I mean, he started off with really going after USAID, and that's the kind of stuff that we had to have somebody go and expose.
I see this whole thing as something it's easy to blame Trump. Oh, Trump is trying to grab power. Well, every president wants to grab power. This is a story of, unfortunately, the 20th century, certainly the second half and up until now. The executive branch wants to be, the unitary president under George W. Bush, But the solution is simple. And this is something you've been saying for decades. Judge Napolitano, our great friend, is very good at pointing this out. The framers of our Constitution had a great idea. The best way to solve this natural problem of looking for more power is to have the legislative branch clipping his wings. No, you can't do that. Here's a law that we've passed that say you can't do that. But they're AWOL, completely AWOL.
Well, I think the big principle that has done so much harm, and this is always risky because people are devoted to democracy. Everybody runs for democracy, and they use it all the time. And of course, democracy says the majority is always right. And which sounds like, well, doesn't that make a lot of sense? No, not at all, because sometimes there's a dictatorship of the majority, and all they have to do is band together all the special interests. So the pure democracy invites all this, and when you have wealth to be grabbed up and distributed by force, then you end up with what we have. And that is going to continue until we wise up or we run out of money, and I'm afraid it's going to be the last half. But I still believe so strongly that the American people would thrive and understand, and deep down in their hearts, they know that freedom is a worthwhile venture to go and seek freedom and have more trust in the people, because that's what the event is right now. government has failed.
Yeah.
It's failing and it's going to get worse, but you don't blame some faction or one person and saying this is it. But it's this idea that the government has the responsibility of simple things which are perfect. They want to make you safe.
Yeah.
They want to protect you against everything. Bad education and bad medicine, the whole works. So they give us COVID and then they give us the public school system.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Well, I'm going to close out. If you skip over to that very last clip, and we don't do this very often here, but I do want to encourage everyone. As you know, the Ron Paul Liberty Report is a project of the Ron Paul Institute, which is a 501c3 charity. And we do exist solely on your donations. We have this QR code up here. You can use your wallet app to scan this and donate Bitcoin directly to the Ron Paul Institute. And we definitely appreciate that. Someone wants to drop a couple of Bitcoins, we would be thrilled to see that happen. Otherwise, you can go to ronpaulinstitute.org and hit that donate page. One of the things that we really particularly like is if you can give us some little bit every month. A recurring donation really helps us do our planning better, helps us to plan new programs, new conferences, new events to spread the Ron Paul message of liberty, peace, and freedom. So we appreciate your support for our efforts. Dr. Paul, over to you.
Very good. I'd like to just bring up again trying to follow the administration and all the politicians and figure out what they really believe in and what to expect from them. And it's not easy because there's a lot of special interests that change, and then their policies change, economic policies change, and they don't understand the difference between free markets and crony capitalism. And so there's a lot of flip-flopping that goes around. And this flip-flopping is something that is very hard to figure out. And yet I think that I tried to accept the idea that you should be open-minded, you should have the discussion, and if you can change a position and explain it, I think that's a compliment rather than a danger. But that doesn't endorse flip-flopping for various political reasons or selfish reasons, because I think it is good to change positions. I've changed some of the positions on some of the big issues, but most of the time I think my time in public office and all was to increase my understanding of what I believe in, whether it is correct or not, and I have depended on finding the people that I respected in economic policies, and obviously I have endorsed the basic principle, Austrian economics, in contrast to Keynesian economics and interventionism, inflationism, and all the nonsense you hear there. So it's difficult, but I think that flip-flopping is a lot different and not advantageous to it as it would be if you have an open mind, and if you can improve your understanding, that is a worthy cause. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.